Back when I started, I struggled with rough finish on my minis for ages, and after testing many different approaches, I found the one which will make your minis flawlessly smooth. So what is it? Hi, I'm Zumikito and I paint models for a living. Some people say that size doesn't matter. Those people don't paint miniatures. And in this video, I'll show you what exactly this technique is, how to use it on your models for the best results, and what are the common mistakes you have to avoid when using it. And the most essential tool to use this technique is this. Well, also a paintbrush, but you know. You see, some people don't use a paper towel when painting, and that's a cause of so many different problems. So here's the thing. I call this technique glaze drawing. And the drawing part is really important. It all starts by thinning your paint to a glaze consistency, maybe something a little bit thicker. Then you wick off the excess into a paper towel. But what I mean is, you have to make sure that your brush has barely any paint in it. This is the key part of this technique. You can't have too much liquid in the bristles, or it won't really work well. However, if you feel like you have no liquid in the bristles, make sure that your paper towel is a little damp. But I would say that you wanna try it over a dry one first. Now, if you have done this correctly, you can paint! The difference between glazing and glaze drawing should be apparent. When glazing, you push liquid from the start of your brushstroke to the end of your brushstroke. When you are glaze drawing, however, the paint will be released more or less depending on the pressure you're using. If you use the same pressure for the entire brushstroke, it'll have even coverage, which should be pretty translucent. This might sound complicated, but it really isn't. So with that being said, let's look at the two ways that I am using this technique, and you'll get it. The first way is easier, and I would recommend starting with that. Simply sketch the first layer on top of your base coat with full coverage. Once you have that, water down that layer, wick off the excess really well, and start dragging your brush from the base coat to the other layer. So far, this doesn't sound that much different from glazing, but the difference is that you should apply less pressure at the start of your brushstroke and apply more pressure at the end. This releases more paint when you want, and once you do multiple passes like this, the transition will get smoother. And if you're wondering, I learned this approach from Arnaud Lazaro, who is outstanding painter and a great guy, so go follow him, the results speak for themselves. Still, you gotta keep in mind that whenever you're blending two layers like this, the less of a difference between them, the easier time you'll have blending them. So once you have a nice transition, you can sketch another layer on top of that, and repeat this process as many times as you want. Essentially, you are sketching your layers with full opacity and blending them later with glaze drawing. However, this technique is way more universal than you might think. Because we are using translucency of the paint and the fact that you can further control it with pressure, we can paint on any surface, even if it was airbrushed. So that's exactly what I did on this miniature from Kingdom Death. After airbrushing the skin, which is pretty much like the initial sketch, I painted the reflections with glaze drawing. So again, I watered down my paint to a glaze consistency, but you can go a little bit thicker. I wicked off the excess properly into a paper towel and tested the consistency on my nail. Since this is all good, I move on to paint the best part of the miniature. The boobs. Of course, I could choose a different part of the miniature to show you, but I gotta keep your attention somehow. Now it's all about dragging the brush from left to right and using low pressure to make the transition smoother. The less paint you wanna release, the less pressure you use. This means that you can do multiple passes to actually build up the proper coverage. And if you apply lower pressure at the start of your brushstrokes, it'll make the transition smoother. Adding some color variety or fixing any imperfections is also possible. By using very translucent paint and controlling how much you release with the pressure you use, glaze drawing makes for an excellent tool to adjust anything you want. As I finish this reflection on the boobs with my final color, you should know that there are 3 things that you should avoid. The first one is using paint that's too thick or too thin. Generally, I am using something a bit thicker than a regular glaze, but not by much. Second, if you don't wick off the excess, it might get messy. The drawing part is really important, and you can't do that if you have too much moisture on the surface. Third is the pressure. If you feel like the brushstrokes are too visible, you are using too much of it. Now, throughout this video you could see that I am using some really good brushes with a nice tip. So if you are wondering which brushes are the best, well, check out this video. And see you there!